deadlines, they're really tough. All of us get stressed sometimes. Nowadays, it's interesting, ever since we had the pandemic, people have really opened up, and part of it's generational, part of it is being isolated for a long period of time, possibly for the workers currently in the workforce. But the reality is we have employees now coming out of the woodwork, talking about emotional issues, how they feel to each other in the workplace, and especially the supervisor. If you're going to be a leader, you need to be able to learn how to listen. And sometimes people will share details that you really don't want to hear, but you may need to hear them to be an effective leader, to be able to lead them properly and give them more than the things that you would normally have done in the past. Stress points are a big thing, and all of us are stressed by different things. A stress, it really is a response to something that's challenging or maybe even threatening to the person that's involved with it. They feel that there's a hostile environment. Now, that eustress is really, is an area where a little bit of tension is actually healthy for you, but sometimes it builds up and up and up until the point that it's distressful and it's causing you to go crazy and nuts. You may say and think and do things that you would never normally do because of the stress that's involved. It is exhausting, especially when the stress is relentless and never seems to hold up. So stress is an adaptive response to situations that are there that people seem to be challenged by, or maybe even totally out of their element because it's so strong. Sometimes when you first have something that goes sideways, you have this alarm reaction, and then you resist, and you fight nonstop until eventually you're totally exhausted by that over time if the stress doesn't let up. It's called the general adaptive syndrome. It really hurts the individuals that are involved by it. We have different aspects of the stressors. Sometimes the organization, sometimes you got a job that just isn't stressful. I worked in human resources for almost 2 full decades. And a lot of times you'd be sitting there and everything be hunky-dory, and all of a sudden, boom, and the world seems to blow up. You got sexual harassment complaints. You got an employee injured over here. You got this happening over here. You got the police over here. You got this. You have 17 different things happening, and it's nothing but high impact stress. I found myself coming home from work and not talking to anybody when they walked through the door until I went to the closet. I got out of my suit, my tie, and they hung them all up and it came to normal clothes. And then he could talk to me. And somehow I equated my suit to being armor so I could sit down and deflect all the wild things happening at work and have calm and peace finally at home. It was really a strange thing because I had lots of stress and I dealt with it in my own way, just like you're going to do that as well. Interpersonal conflict sometimes is so stressful. Some people can't really take it very well. I'd sit down and I'd have somebody come in the office and have to break some really difficult news, some of the worst news possible, and they'd start crying, and I'd just reach over and I'd get my tissues and put them over by them and everything. But you needed to sit down and do this before. You were talked about by your supervisor. Now you got to face this issue. Yes, but, and get the Kleenex tissues over there and everything else. And it seemed like I was heartless in the process, except for the fact that I wasn't the one that caused it. They're the one that caused it. And I had to sit down there and accept that, because before I would be devastated. I had to deliver bad news to somebody for whatever it may be, because of the fact that I felt I did something that wasn't me, it was them. So make certain on stresses that if there's a stress, you want to give the person that caused it as much stress as possible instead of you trying to take it on yourself. There could be interpersonal conflict. It really damages your personal goals because you have to set time aside to deal with what they have. Sometimes there's just work overload. I got to tell you, on some of the jobs I've had, I would arrive early at work an hour and I'd stay late an hour, because that 8 hours in between, those hour at the beginning and hour at the end, were nothing but high stress. And you go from meeting to meeting to meeting. My record is 17 meetings in one day. Okay. And to be honest, I have no idea what happened at the end of the day. I just knew I was numb, and I was delighted to sit down at 5:30 after an entire day starting at 7, just going through the whole day and finally relaxing in the office, doing paperwork. And I found paperwork relaxing. That is sick behavior. Anyhow, so more hours, more intensive work, low task control. A lot of times when things are not in your control, that's when you have the most stress. People experience less stress outcomes when they have good health. Sometimes you get so caught up in the work that the idea of exercise never occurs to you, and you end up eating too much. You end up thinking too much, you end up getting overweight, you end up having all kinds of behavioral issues, and your lifestyle at home, you can't do anything but think about work. That is not healthy. You need to focus in sometimes on yourself and develop some stress coping strategies. In my case, part of it was taking off my work uniform and putting on my casual clothes. That was a big deal. Sometimes it depends on your level of neuroticism, which isn't a bad thing. If you have a low amount and you're very stable emotionally, that really is good. And if you have that high extroversion, that energetic personality, you can overcome a lot of things, especially if you have a positive self-concept, which is really very powerful, that you can conquer anything. Sometimes people always thought that, hey, you've really got a good, calm personality. And I'm thinking, I'm not calm. On the inside, I'm churning nonstop, but you always have this calm demeanor and you always smile. Even when your world is ending in flames around you, you just smile and people will think you have it under control. It seems to work. Anyway, so the best way to deal with work with stress, number one, remove the stressor. No, you can't. Sometimes you got to fire the person who's causing it, but usually remove the stressor. Sometimes you have to remove yourself out of the situation, withdraw, change the perception. Okay, they're just responding to what I said. Okay, control the stress consequences and then receive the social support. Sometimes you go out with a colleague at the same rank and just go have something, a coffee or whatever with them, and just have some social support, sometimes having a social support group. I created a leadership circle where I had all the middle managers. We would sit down and just talk about work and about different problems, and we would solve them. There were 17 of us. We'd talk and everything else, and I led the discussion. I kind of pushed them into the aspect of, okay, here we go. And things started going better in the entire college just because of that monthly meeting we had where we could have social support. These 5 things, put them in your notes, but also put them into your life in the aspect. People talk about stress and emotional strains more than ever in the workplace. Employee physical health helps to deal with stress. I recommend, if you have the opportunity, develop an employee wellness program, give gift certificates of a couple $100 for people that achieve so many different things in a quarter. That really helps. It's incredible when you run a program like that, how people will respond in a positive way, and you'll have less workers' comp issues as well. And then continued stress increases the probability of employee exhaustion. Take care. Don't be stressed.